Chapter 10. Jovani and Lycell had been gone over a week searching every cave in the area. Hannah sat near the fire reading to make the time pass and wondered how long before Jovani would return to her. She went about her days with the same routine. Sleep, eat, shower, and read. Someone in the family of werewolves read voraciously. The large room had a library that would make any bibliophile envious with that collection. She could lose herself in these books, which she did. How else could she keep from losing her mind? She was a child of the technological age. With no phones or computers, no way to get any information could have driven her crazy if it hadn't been for this library. Her favorite books were the vampire fiction. But it was no longer fiction for her. It was real. Hannah had fallen in love with an immortal of the night. A fictional being portrayed by the world, who drinks blood to survive and travels around only at night. What kind of life is she exposing herself to, she wondered. She couldn't have second thoughts. She had slept with this creature of the night, and it had been glorious. Never had she expected the feeling she now possessed for Jovani. Never had she experienced something so soul-encompassing as when Jovani took her in his arms and buried his cold, hard body deep inside of her. She knew one thing: she would never be the same, and the life as she knew it had ended. Her thoughts were full as she strode in the shower and then stepped out. "What do I do today to keep myself occupied until Jovani returns?" she murmured as she threw a robe over her body and pulled her wet hair back. "You can start by leaving this place before I call the Samses and the police." Turning quick, her eyes met a man with dirty blonde hair in his 30s. He was tall and wore a pair of jeans and a black and red lumberjack shirt. His arms long and heavy, as if they were part of an unfinished sculpture. "Who are you?" Hannah asked. "Were you spying on me?" "You're trespassing. I've had to visit this property more than once to keep you college students out, and preventing you from destroying the place. I'm only going to tell you one more time before I call the police." The blond man stood controlled with a serious gaze with eyes that had seen war. "Please call the police. I've been hoping someone would come and give me a ride to town. Do you have a phone?" she questioned, walking toward him to shake his hand. But he wasn't sure what she was doing, and he nervously stepped to the side. She dropped her hands to her side. "Yes, I have a phone. But I need you to explain why you're here before I get the Samses involved. They're miles away, and before I go disturbing them, I need to hear your story." Hannah walked in the direction of the large room where the fire was taking its last breath. The man followed behind her. "Do you know how to keep this fire going?" Hannah asked. "Of course. Why do you think I'm here? I'm the caretaker. I brought canned goods, vegetables, and fruit for the Samses. I never know when they'll visit to hunt for fresh meat. They come here to hunt, nothing else, and when I see you making yourself at home around here," he said, glancing around the room, eyeing her shoes and remnants of boxes of cookies and crackers. "I know that Mrs. Samsa isn't here this time of year. She likes to can food and keep some in the cellar. So I figured college kids had broken in and taken over." "Does it look like anyone has broken in?" Hannah questioned. "Lycell Samsa left me here until he and Justin returns. They must have known that you would be by to check on me. But I'd like for you to take me to the nearest town, or if you have a cell phone, please let me use it to call a friend." The young blonde man with the trusting face thought for a moment. "I have a phone, but there's no reception, or the reception is bad. Can you drive me to the nearest town?" Hannah didn't want to be there when Lycell, Justin, and Jovani returned. She knew Jovani would take her back with him, and Justin would protest, and maybe a fight would ensue. She didn't want to take that chance. Not on Jovani's life, since there would be 2 werewolves when they returned. And 2 werewolves would be more than Jovani could handle, especially if he thought Justin would take her from him. There wouldn't be any discussions. They would have to fight over Hannah, and one had to die. She didn't want anyone to die. How long is it going to take for you to be ready? I have to bring in the groceries and stack them in the pantry. When you've finished, then I'll be ready to go with you. And she turned and walked to the bedroom. The ride to the nearest small town took an hour in the man's old banged-up Jeep Cherokee. Each time he drove, he glanced over at Hannah. If it's none of my business, why were you out there alone? If it's none of my business, why are you working for the Samses? He looked at her in earnest, not expecting an answer to his question, but eager to answer her. I had been a soldier in the war, and when I returned, no one would hire me. I needed a job. The Samses were the only ones who would hire someone like me. I had PTSD because of the tours I spent in Afghanistan. I vaguely remembered Lycell, but he recognized me. He saved my life over there and brought me back. Gave me a job as a caretaker, built me a home, and now I'm grateful and protective of their privacy. I would die for the Samses. His eyes wavered to Hannah and then in front of him to the icy road. The drive was taking longer than Hannah had anticipated, but she could tell why the man was being cautious, and it was only because of her. Soldiers aren't cautious. They go where no one else would go, and is loyal to their own. To their comrades in arms. That's what Lycell was to him, and if Lycell thought enough to have her in his home, she must have known about the Samses, and therefore a part of them, and he had to protect her too. As he turned a winding curve, taking his eyes off the road for a second, he said, "Do you know what they are?" She took a long moment before she answered. Hannah narrowed her eyes. If she said what they were, werewolves, and he didn't know about them, she could be putting him in danger or herself by revealing that information. The only thing she could get from him would be a laugh if he didn't know their secret. Yes. The Samses are werewolves. The man took in a long breath. Now he knew she told him the truth, and he turned his attention to the road. We'll be there soon. We'll get to a small store, and you can make a call from there. I need to get some cigarettes and gas. The young blonde man drove up to the pump and parked. Try this phone. He handed Hannah an iPhone. She glanced at it and said, "Nice phone." Mrs. Samsa gave it to me. Being alone all the time, it gives me something to do. I don't like television, too noisy, he said, climbing outside the truck and reaching for the pump. Hannah watched at the man. He was handsome and a kind person, but he looked damaged. She saw it in his eyes the moment she met him. The wide look he gave her when they first met. But his voice soft, as if someone suggested that he lower it so as not to alarm anyone. Putting in the phone number of Gabriella, it rang for 2 seconds. From the noise and the honking of horns, she knew Gabriella was outside walking. Gabby. Who is this? No one calls me Gabby but my mom and my friend. Oh, for fuck's sake. Is that you, Hannah? Yes, it's me, Gabby. Tears fell from Hannah's eyes to her cheeks and to the corner of her mouth, and she passed her hand to wipe them away. Are you okay? The paper said that you were dead. I had to break the news to your mother and father. But it was all over the news that you and Justin's plane went down somewhere in Kentucky. It crashed in Virginia, but I don't know where I am now. Somewhere in Virginia, I guess. When are you coming home? I have questions I have to ask you, and then there is this woman looking for you. I thought she was a policewoman at first, but then I realized that they don't dress in designer black and white. This woman was dressed in the best European fashions money could buy. You know, detectives don't get paid nearly enough for the work they do. Gabriella went on talking because she was nervous and happy at the same time. Happy that Hannah was alive and excited to be talking to her best friend. When are you coming home? Gabriella repeated. If I can pay this guy to drive me, I can be in New York tomorrow. Do you have any money? Hannah asked. Sure. If you can get home, it's yours. I miss you, and my mother threatened to sell my apartment if I don't have a roommate. I have to go, Gabriella, he's coming out now. Call you along the road. Who's coming out? And in the middle of the question, Hannah hit the red button. When she looked at the guy, he was being followed by 3 other men. And it appeared as if they were taunting him about something. When they neared the Jeep, someone leaned in and said, "Are you his girl?" "That's none of your business," Hannah replied. The man turned to his friends and said, "See, I told you. This dumbass couldn't get a girl if one fell on his face." And then the one leading the taunt hit his friend on the back. "He probably kidnapped her, let's go and turn on the news. We'll probably see her there." And they laughed again and climbed into a new Ford truck and headed west. The blonde guy with the pleasing and warm smile kept smiling amid the bullying, and he didn't react. He placed the pump nozzle in its position and stepped into the truck and drove off going east.